Hello, everyone, and we are back. The Thursday crew, BibleQuest.org. Glad to have you joining us this evening. Kenny, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. How about you, Carl?
Doing great here. Thank you for asking. Glad to hear you guys are doing well.
Yeah, we're doing fine. So we want to bring up a timely topic because it's voting season. And we just did one of you guys just came out and showed a report of 100 million, over 100 million people of faith that didn't identify exactly Christianity or not, but people of faith don't vote. They don't think it's necessary. They don't want to get involved with the politics, and I can respect that. But what about that? So let's talk about that. Can a Christian vote? Is it required that a Christian vote? And well, first of all, I don't think it's required. No one has. We have the right to vote, but we're not made to vote. We don't have to vote. I'm talking about anybody in the United States has a right to vote. So, Kenny, why don't you start it off?
Yeah, so that was a recent study by Arizona Christian University. It said 104 million people who fall into the category of people of faith. So obviously we know that that's a wide umbrella, but they will not cast a ballot in the upcoming election. So that's a big number. And that's a big number that's missing that could sway, some things either way. And not to say, like, just like you just said, I don't think the purpose of this is to say you have to go out and vote, and nor does the Bible clearly state that, obviously. But it's to look at what are some policies, if you are voting, maybe that we need to take into consideration. And also just what, as Christians, what do we need to think about? If we're on the teetering, if we don't want to vote or we want to vote, what are some things, what the scriptures say, and what can we glean from that, I guess, is what I'm getting at there. So I think that's where we can start. Maybe just start with what to consider when voting, if you're going to vote. What are some of the major things? Because a lot of people will, worry about their taxes. And I'm not saying they're trivial, but that's trivial compared to some of the major things that scripture would tell us that we need to be voting for, especially when we see what's going on in our country and what the current administration has pushed over the last 4 years. And I think one of the biggest things that you have to start with is the sanctity of life. That if you're going to sit back and say that life doesn't matter, that's one of my biggest things, because I've thought the same thing about voting. I've thought, why even vote? It's the lesser of both evils. Really, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm fanatical about anybody. I don't have a sign in my yard, but you have to start looking at the values if you are going to vote. And what am I saying as a Christian if I'm just sitting back and not protecting and standing up for life? And somebody would say, well, your vote doesn't matter. It's corrupt. It's rigged, blah, blah, blah. So as I've sat and thought and prayed about it, I've thought to myself, even if it is rigged, who says it is? How do you, people say, well, I have video of this, I have video of that. We voted for how long in this country? We have the right to do it. And my thought is, this is one way I can be a Christian and be a light, be the salt of the earth, and go and stand up for the sanctity of life. And by casting a vote, that's one way to do it. Is it the only way? No, I'm not saying that. But I think that's at the top of the things to consider when we're voting is the sanctity of life.
Let me add something in there. There are no perfect human beings.
Right.
For individuals who are flawed. Kings were flawed. Presidents were flawed. Nebuchadnezzar was flawed. Pharaoh was flawed. But God put them in place. And they weren't voted in. They were kings. They took power. So as a Christian, I'm not voting for a saint. A Christian. I'm not voting for a Christian. I'm voting in the physical, material world that I live in. We have the opportunity to vote. Now, I don't criticize anybody who chooses not to. It's a personal choice, obviously. But I'm not looking at finding I'd love to find the perfect person.
Yeah.
But that ain't going to happen. That's just not our world, right? Our
Right.
goal is to spread the gospel. But we also live in the world. Did God does God establish nations today as he did back then? Yeah, you're saying yeah, right, Carl?
Well, I was actually going to bring up this principle. I think that's really helpful. There are two major principles that ought to govern us when we're even thinking about this subject. And one of those is Romans 13, where all the authorities that are in place are there by God. You might mention Nebuchadnezzar. Who wants to think that that person was there by God? But he allowed Nebuchadnezzar to be there for his purposes. When Paul wrote this in Romans 13, it was Caesar, Nero Caesar, who was in charge. And Paul said, you must submit to the authorities. Like, don't do evil things, but authority exists for a reason. And God is the ultimate authority, and he rises up and puts down nations. That is a principle that's been taught. The second one I was going to go to would be in 1 Timothy chapter 1, where we ought to be praying for the leaders of our nation and leaders of all other nations as well.
Yeah.
For the
wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to pray for them. I'm not going to vote for them.
Well, my point was going to be, if we have an opportunity to influence that these leaders are going to be those who are thinking at least more along the lines of things that are going to be helpful for Christianity, helpful for the causes of God, then if we can influence that with our vote, that's where we ought to be.
And that's kind of what I would say. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. In that prayer, he was saying, what was it? Paul was making a statement where submit to authorities because they're put there for God's purpose, right? To punish evildoers.
Right.
All right. So how does God put men or women in political power? How does he do that? Give me the mechanics. He does it. Does he do it miraculously? No, but he does it. How does he do it? We really don't know until after the fact. But if you see how Assyria and Babylon and the Grecian, all of the different empires, they did it by force. Mm-hmm. You mean God's doing it? I don't know the mechanics on how he does it, but he's in charge. He does it. And so it's individuals that are carrying out his work, right? Bad individuals and good individuals. But they all carry out his work, right? So I'm trying to get down to the point. Am I an instrument of God?
You ought to be. You will be in some sense, yes.
So what if there's two people that are running for office, and one party, the majority of their platform is to kill babies? You brought that up, abortion. The majority of that platform is to provide transgender care, and they call it care to play down the damage, but to destroy children's lives. Children can't make a decision at 12, 13 years old, but the party wants to do that. What else they want to? There's so many things, right? But then you have another party that doesn't promote those things. So I have an opportunity to vote for one party or another. I'm going to look at what's going on. And the evil that's being done here, let's say the evil on this side is 70% evil, and the evil on this side is 40% evil. Well, I'm not going to vote for evil. Well, you're not then participating. Then you're not, am I making too much of it? God is putting the man or the woman in position, but he's not doing it miraculously. He's using, in this country at least, in our nation, he's using the collective to decide. So that if you and I don't vote, if I don't vote, and 104 people of faith don't vote, what they're allowing is the other side to get their way. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to look at it that way. Like, is there anything wrong with me voting as a Christian? Is it wrong for me to vote?
Absolutely not. It's a right that we're afforded in this particular country. Not everybody has that right in other places. So if we can take advantage of that to wield some sort of influence over the decisions that are being made, that's great. in the grand scheme of things, it's God's will that's going to be done. We talked about, these kings that are evil men, whether they're better or not, they're still evil men. They're still being guided by the prince of this world. Jesus is king. He's reigning, but he's reigning spiritually. The physical world is still being manipulated by Satan. And so if we can do things that'll help set up a better atmosphere for the propagation of the gospel, then we ought to be involved with that. That's what First Timothy 2 is about.
That was my second. So what to consider when voting, the sanctity of life. The second was religious freedom, because if you have a government hostile to Christianity, that's going to impede or make it difficult for us to carry out the Great Commission. Not impossible, but it's going to make it much harder for us to do. And that's what I don't think anybody disagree that over the last 4 years and even before that, we can start to see that happening. We have a government that's obviously what Drew said, the transgender stuff, and that's point number 3 actually, is marriage and family. They want to redefine that. And if we just sit back, that's my thought. If I just think about myself, if I sit back, what am I saying? I feel like I'm just going along with it. Is my vote going to matter? I'm not saying it is or not, but am I standing up and doing what's right? And that goes along with what you were saying, Carl, before. It's not the only way. We're to pray too. That's another responsibility. Voting's not the only way to make it happen, but if that helps, that's what I have to do in my mind.
Yes. Am I voting or lack of voting for evil? More evil than the one side is more evil than the other. It's always the case.
You're right. It's the lesser of two evils, definitely. That's
I don't like using that term, but I don't have an alternative term. It's the lesser of two evils.
It is. It honestly is. I have no problem saying it, because it is.
Now, well, wait a minute. Did Jesus ever get involved in politics? Yes, he did. Maybe I'm making more of it than I should. I think he did. When he was talking about taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Did he say, don't pay your taxes to Rome? What did he say? I don't know that passage. Do you know where that passage is?
Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's, right?
I forgot how the discussion came up, but Peter went and got some fish or something, and it was no, I'm getting that mixed up.
That's in Matthew's account.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the one with the coin. He says he showed the Pharisees. I think it says pictures on that coin.
That's Mark 12 is where I'm looking at it, verses 13 to 17, where he said that render to Caesar. This is Mark 12:17. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So there's a responsibility of the citizen to contribute and to participate well in government. And government is meant not to be a terror to good works, but to support good works and to maintain order is really the idea. That's the problem, is government has become bigger than its britches, if you want to say it that way. Government is meant to maintain order. That's what government is about. And authority that God establishes is for that.
When Jesus said that, would you say Rome is bigger than its britches?
Oh, for sure.
Right? And wait a minute, Lord, you really don't want me to give taxes to Rome because they're so corrupt and immoral. No, he didn't say anything about that. They're going to pay for that. They're going to answer to the Lord for their missing not carrying out God's will. But it's our responsibility to do what we in this physical world, to do what we can do. So I want to encourage people to vote. I'm not telling them which way they vote, but look at the sides and what party is doing what. And you have to vote by the majority of what that group is going for, in my opinion. And if it's going for the things where we are heading for, like the things I mentioned before, that.
Look at the force of the political campaign. They're going to tell you what their three main things are. You watch You watch 8 political commercials, you'll know what they're about. It won't take long, and you'll see the same things repeated.
Right. Kenny, you were going to say something. I interrupted you before.
That's all right. I mean, it's obviously you're not going to tell anybody, but you need to look at those. If you're saying you're a Christian, I really think, and if you're going to go to the polls, you need to look at those 3 main things. Sanctity of life is huge. Redefining marriage and our ability to spread the gospel. Are they attacking that? And you'll see. I know we say the lesser of both evils, but you'll see one side is purely satanic. That's as blunt as I can be. But it's obvious they're godless. They'll say they're Christians just to lure some sides, but they aren't. They aren't, not one bit.
You'll know them by their fruit.
Yep.
So if we're to pray for our leaders so that we have peace to spread the gospel, is it suggesting too much? Then in our nation, we can vote for our leaders so that we pray and vote. Pray that the leaders will do the right thing and that we won't lose our freedoms to spread the gospel, and vote for people who will clearly not take our rights away to spread the gospel. And if I don't vote, then I'm giving the other side the opportunity, especially if it's 104 million people who obey that. That's a big, powerful force if they all vote, but vote their conscience. And okay, I said enough. Guys, what else are you going to say?
I one last thought that came to my mind as I've contemplated this, because like I said, I was on the fence a lot through the year. And Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when a wicked man rules, the people groan. You don't have if you're not going and you're not voting, don't groan.
Right.
That
Oh, yeah. All right. Go to BibleQuest.org. Hit the contact link, fill out the form, tell us what you want us to talk about in a future program, or give us comments or questions about what we're talking about tonight, or BibleQuest.org @gmail.com. That's BibleQuest.org @gmail.com. And let us know what you think. We want to hear from everybody. If you send us an email, we'd like to read it. We will not say your name if you don't want us to say your name, but if you have a comment or question, we want to respond to it. So please respond and give us your feedback. Guys, I want to thank you again tonight and the conversation, and we'll pick up again next time. You have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.